Everyone, welcome to another episode of I Know This Guy, the podcast where we dive deep into the lives of some of the most interesting people I know. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to I Know This Guy wherever you get your podcasts. By the way, my kids want me to say something about ringing a bell. What the hell's a bell?
All right. So, Dad, who do we have lined up for the podcast?
Hey, we have an incredible guest today. Do you remember Marcello Brodsky?
Yeah, of course.
Well, he contacted us the other day and he said, "Look, I've got another person to talk on the podcast, and this is Dori Caymmi. He's a musician, composer. He's worked with some of the top Brazilian musicians, but also world-class jazz musicians. Some of the albums that he's produced, it's incredible."
Yeah, I can't believe it. Especially looking at his discography, there's some of the biggest names in jazz. So, yeah, obviously, I'm super stoked about this one.
As a matter of fact, I guarantee you're going to take over some of this interview.
I have a feeling. All right, well, let's dive into it.
So welcome to the podcast, Dori.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation. I'm glad that I'm speaking to Canada,
Yeah, we're really happy to have you on. This is a surprise, actually, because Marcello Brodsky, he mentioned that he knew you, and all of a sudden it was, wow, okay, we got to get you on to the podcast. So I can't wait to dig a little bit deeper into your life and into your backstory, to talk a bit more about, I always say, what makes Dori Dori? So can we just kind of dig into your backstory a little bit and, just go back to when you were a kid and maybe some things that made you get into music?
Mm-hmm. Yes, my father, Dorival Caymmi, like you call it, because I'm not junior, but, he was a Brazilian composer, great artist. And my mother was a singer, using the singing name of Stella Maris. It's like a star of the sea or something like that, Don't ask me for translations. But anyway, and we grew up in a very musical family. We sang together home since I was 5 years old. And we are three kids, not kids anymore. I'm 77. But anyway, we started. My father had three different styles of compositions, always Brazilian. I grew up listening to the ocean, the songs about the ocean, the sea, the Bahia fishermen. It's fantastic. I got so became a musician for sure. My sister, in the other hand, the samba canção, the like a Jobim style, a little more, not really bossa nova, but some between, we call samba canção. It's a slow samba, relaxed. And my brother, Danilo, the youngest one, he likes samba. So those are the three different styles of my father. So that's why we became musicians and singers, and because he brought us every music all the time. We heard Ella Carol, Sarah Vaughan, Beniamino Gigli in Italy, or French composers, and classical music. So every information came from him and from my mother. So it was a beautiful musical beginning of our lives in Rio de Janeiro. He was from Bahia, a state that gave up a lot of great musicians, like Gilberto is from Bahia. Gilberto, the bossa nova guy.
Yeah. Right.
So, and my mother from Minas, and which is Ari Barroso, the guy that wrote Brazil. We were very musical and happy family.
Now, I have to apologize that there's a slight delay because of my internet, I think. But
No, you're
anyways,
good.
yeah, do I sound okay?
Oh, yes, you sound okay. You're going to sing in my next album.
Oh boy. Yeah, yeah, that'll happen.
Let's hear it, Dad.
Yeah.
It's your
You know
debut.
what? If I ever broke into a tune, you'd be running. Oh, but so you came from a musical family, and not only a musical family, but very well-known musicians. And I know more about your dad. Was your mom a professional musician as well in Brazil?
No, she was a singer, and she gave up the singing and married my father, and that was it. Became a mother, a tough one.
Tough mom. Uh-oh. I won't go down that path. So now that you've studied your family's musical, did you get any education, like musical education? Did you go to college or school for music?
No, not really. I was a terrible student all my life. I don't know why, but I didn't have this tolerance to hear some person tell me what to do musically. So when I was 7 years old, my father sent me to one of the best teachers in Brazil, Lucia Branco. I arrived there and I said, why you want to play piano? I said, I want to play Claire de Lune, Debussy song. And she told me, yeah, boy, you have a lot to get the points that you can play Debussy, And I can play the beginning. And I play the blah, 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 blah. And she fired me immediately. She called my father and said, he's going to be a musician, but never a piano player. So during my entire life, I was a bad student, terrible student. And so I didn't go to school, the university. After the army, which was mandatory, I started to produce and arrange, and so I gave up the college, everything for the music, to work, to make some money, and we're always looking for a little more static, like a beauty, and faithful to the positions in terms of music. So I love the other rhythms from the world. I just don't like people trying to imitate in Brazil, like a Brazilian rapper or rock and roll, So that's called me a little too much conservative about it. But I gave up and I became a producer, arranger, and in love with all the Johnny Mandels of Jones, and I work with them. So I'm a very happy person.
So let's talk a bit about that. Can you give us a couple of stories about producing and working with different people, famous or not, just some interesting stories?
Well, in the beginning, the first album of another great composer from Bahia, I don't know if you heard about him, Caetano Veloso.
No, I'm not familiar.
No.
No, his first album with another singer, Gerald Costa. I did my first arrangements at this time for this particular album called Domingo. And, the sales were terrible. But anyway, it's very beautiful, the singing and everything. The next album of Caetano, they called me again, and he was trying to change the songs of my father, my father's song. So I refused. And I needed the money at the time, but I refused because I don't like that kind of, not because it's my father. It's, if you write something, it's like I heard that the people wants to change the books of Mark Twain. It's like I don't like that too. So I learned a lot from musicians, Gilberto, Jobim. Jobim. I wrote with him an album called Machita Pere, which is birds, Brazilian birds, and we wrote the all the preparation of arrangements and stuff, but the final call was Klaus Ogerman, because the Brazilian was not capable to understand Jobim at the time with that kind of arrangement. So I learned from them a lot, from life. I used to love Sarah Vaughan, and then finally I wrote her last album as an arranger. So it's beautiful, because you love your heroes, and then you have a chance to do your heroes, like Gilberto, Jobim, my father, Sarah Vaughan, Johnny Mathis. A lot of singers that I used to love and dance and sing and have fun. I work with them. At the end of this whole process of United States, had the respect as a musician from a lot of my heroes, and that was beautiful for me. It's like I'm a happy.
I can only imagine what it would be like going and working with people that you admire, and being able to take part in working or producing albums. You mentioned Sarah Vaughan, Johnny Mathis. I mean, just huge names in the industry. I'm wondering, you've been part of the industry through there's so many changes. Are there any common factors that you've seen in music that stands the test of time?
Yeah, I think it's music. It's weird. It comes back always. Today, we have more like the entertainment took care of the whole business. So the thing became like a dancing and singing and with a lot of people on stage, and very expensive shows, and with the internet it became worse. Everybody wants to be an artist, So, but anyway, music always come back. I think so. I still believe that we're gonna have a separation from music and the way that they see now as basically as an entertainment and a lot of album stuff. And I believe in a small group of people listen to better than dancing and having beer, and I'm not against, but it's not my thing.
Right.
So I believe music is still capable to open up all the I don't know how to say, but you can be there, like Gilberto, still very responsible for the way that we see music in Brazil. Jobim still, Jobim became a statue in Ipanema, like my father, Yeah. So people build them statues. But I don't want to be a statue. I just want that music keep going, the way it is. We have a less promotion stuff, People, they like the stuff. Like there's a lot of Beyonce in Brazil right now, or Rihanna's. You have a lot of that kind of music in Brazil right now.
Yeah.
So there's there's funk, rap, and pop songs, like rock and roll, but it's not affecting new generations of musicians. They have the option to hear to the other side. So I think it's fair. There's a lot of people with talent in Brazil, but they don't see thousands of people on stage. They don't have the money. They don't have So it's a little tougher, but it's working. It's working. We still have a lot of people here in Brazil with talent to do the other side. Not only the instrument, do because they love. They can.
So, and I'm not sure if I'm going to say this properly, but what about, like, are there any common factors that you see in musicians or composers that make them successful?
I'm talking about my generation. It's the third, probably the third generations of real Brazilian influenced by the hour of music. And there are many styles. Have music. Samba came from Africa. Have some stuff that in the northeast of Brazil. So my generation have at least 15 important composers and very successful composers in the like Milton Nascimento and Du Lobo and Chico Buarque. There's many, and they're very important in the business. If I hate to call business, that's the way it is. It's a business, and but my generation is probably best with a lot of promotion, basically, because actually now, like I said before, there's no way that people to promote the kind of music that we make. It's a little difficult for the young people doing music in Brazil. Still, we have my generation have a lot of common and a lot of togetherness. They groups, in from the Northeast. Rio now, because Rio was the cultural center of Brazil for many years. So you have Jobim. So everybody came to Rio de Janeiro to become somebody. It's like he came to Rio. My father, Gilberto Ozo, the guy that wrote Brazil. So every composer, every writer, painter, almost all of them came to de Janeiro to live. And so that's why my generation is very well prepared musically. So very successful. I don't know if I answered your question because, your English is so beautiful and mine is terrible. So I understand sometimes I do not. So, but anyway, there's a lot of, in my generation, there's a lot of same ideas musically for I think it's the last one that the press, say something about it.
So the other thing I'm really curious about, you've been involved with music all your life. Where does your inspiration come from?
Difficult question. Yeah, I don't know. Every song that I write it basically comes from my the way that I play like a orchestra, an instrument. It's not only chords and stuff. They have to have a meaning. So my guitar in each song is a guitar. It's a different combination of chords. Basically I started there, but my inspiration is still nature. Basically the one that they are trying out in Brazil. And unless I was asked for a quote about life, and I said save the forest and life, a black life matter. So those my inspiration comes really from the that came before me, and like of my father, a generation before him, that became to play the Brazilian popular music after the empire or something. I think 1920 more or less. So those guys are the base of my music, and my entire generation. You know. Right now, I'm inspired by the lyrics of my friend and partner Paulo César Pinheiro, because since my parents passed away in 2008, I became a little dry musically in terms of write a song for somebody. So I'm using his poem, and I'm putting music in his poems, basically right now. So I think I'm getting old, but
Hayden was very excited when we were told that you're going to be on the podcast. And I know he's been sitting back wanting to ask you a few questions. I don't know, Hayden, if you explained to Dori that you're a musician as well.
No, it hasn't come up yet, but yeah, it's funny, Dori. I looked at all the credits and everything, and I realized that actually I've listened to a few of the albums that you produced. I'm a huge fan of Nara Leao and Gal Costa, especially too. And I studied with John Patitucci a few years ago. He was my teacher at Berkeley.
yeah, I recorded in Los Angeles too, Patitucci.
Yeah. I'm curious, actually, how was it working with John?
Very good. He was a nice guy. He's a nice guy. You know, American musicians, they treat me so well. You know, there was not a conflict musically. I work with pop musicians. Jeff Porcaro was the drummer, or and so many. I forget names. I'm getting old. Yeah. Don't worry about it. But I worked, with Nara, with Gal Costa, with with Jobim and many others. My sister in the United States, like Sarah Vaughan and Johnny Mathis, and I met some important musicians like Mancini. And I remember I played a song for him. This is a curious fact. I played for him a song, and it's called Old Piano, Velho Piano. And then there's a change melodically and harmonically back to the key. And he looked at me and said, I hate you. It's like... I wish I had the same idea musically. And I told him, I'll give you the song and you give me for a year the royalties. So, yeah, well, would be nice.
Yeah, for sure. I was curious. I mean, I've heard, I've only really recently gotten into different styles of Brazilian music and really listening more in depth. But I know there was a huge shift in Brazilian music around the 50s and 60s, especially going from bossa nova into MPB. How did it feel in the music scene at that time? Like, did you feel like a cultural shift where people were kind of pushing back against bossa nova a little bit? And
at the time, really, a lot of critics in terms of this new thing that was brought by Gilberto, basically because we called the bossa nova, or here they call the bossa nova the way that João Gilberto plays the guitar. And that's the start, so, and then generation listened a lot of American music, like the West Coast jazz, and then Miles Davis and Coltrane, and so not really Coltrane, but basically the West Coast jazz,
right?
That had a great influence at that. So it's a great time, including Barney Castle.
Okay, yeah,
American guitar player. Because he played an album with London. It's a beautiful. She sang me a river. This was the big hit of her here in Brazil, and also the guitar a lot. The way that modern Brazilian guitarist plays with Barney Castle and Chet Baker.
Yeah, right. I can see that.
The album called Chet Baker Sings. So Bossa Nova became very influenced that kind of at the time. So if you put this with the stuff now, so we have a lot of musicians that came to Brazil to record, like Herbie Mann, made an entire album. He was a pioneer in this thing. He recorded in Brazil with a lot of musicians. So there's something very jazzy, which I like very much. And he came with those people, and also Baden Powell, that have the name of the guy, but he's not. He's a guitar player and composer from Brazil, and his father gave the name of Baden Powell. So, so the bossa nova, it's really a great change in the way that the music, but always with some other informations in terms of music, And we, at this point, everything was kind of the same. Bossa nova was like I said, something new. That in 1962, as you probably know, in the Carnegie Hall, the bossa nova was presented to United States, and suddenly they fell in love with everything. I remember that I was there, and Miles and Gil Evans, my heroes, they knew that I was friend of João Gilberto that was living in New York at the time. Say, a Brazilian musician introduced me to them, and they say, "Mike, can you talk to Gilberto and see if we can make an album together?" And the funny thing, I came to Gilberto and very happy, and said, "My God, Gil Evans and Miles Davis, wow." He just said, "Oh my God, don't talk about those guys. I don't like them at all." And actually, if you think, there was no notion in terms of musically, the orchestrations of Gil, which is one of the biggest influences in my musical view at the time. Gil was a master. I think he was Canadian. I think he was from Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Like Rob, another one here, Rob McConnell.
Oh, Rob McConnell,
yeah. Incredible musician. Oh my God. And I heard that Gil is from Canada too.
Yeah, you're right.
So you guys, you should take your heads.
Yeah.
Bossa Nova was beautiful. Bossa Nova was the beginning of my generation.
I know I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I think you're maybe the most qualified to talk about it. But I read an interview of Nara Leao, and she said that there was like pushback against bossa nova because it started to feel alienating, and there's that specific word. I don't know if you could elaborate on that. I had never heard that mentioned before this interview that I read.
Well, I work with her in two. I produced 2 albums for her, and also a show called Opinião during the military government. I directed the musical parts with her. Well, she was a princess, it's like a family living in a big apartment in front of the sea. So they call her the muse of the bossa nova. I think she was trying to get out of this label thing,
Yeah.
And so, but she was a very good founder of composers. Not founder, but he was discreet and releasing some great authors, it's like a Paulinho da Viola, and so she came into the samba stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But she's not really a singer, with and she was into little activist in terms of so she changed from the bossa nova to the samba.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I don't see her as a singer, and I think that opinion about it, that bossa nova, it's make her a little more than she was thinking. That bossa nova was very important, and she used during a time, and then she became change styles, but she was a talker.
Hey guys and gals, that's it for part 1 of our interview with Dori Caymmi. Make sure to tune in next time to hear the rest of the interview. As always, make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. That's enough for me, and I'll see you next time.
This guy